So today we are going to talk about Ghostrunner level design production pipeline. Let's go. So my name is Marcin Kluzek. I work at One More Level. I am a lead level designer, gameplay designer, and I've been working in gameplay since 2010. At One More Level since 2015. At One More Level, I've been associated with such games as Ghostrunner, Ghostrunner Project Hell, and currently working on Ghostrunner 2. So we are going to talk about briefly for those who don't know what is Ghostrunner first of all. Then we are going to talk about the production pipeline. How do we create a level? How do we test a level? And how do we work with level art? And we're going to finish off with a mindset of a designer that's creating those levels. So what is Ghostrunner? Ghostrunner is a first-person action game, heavily focused on parkour and combat. And the main feature of the game is that is one hit, one kill. That means everything has to be really clear for the player, how to defeat the enemy, where to go, what to do with the objects. It's very fast and difficult. There are three game pillars of the game. First of all, we want the player to feel like a ninja, right? So then we want the player to feel like a badass. And we want also the player to experience the post-apocalyptic cyberpunk world. So all of those little things, including the main idea of the game, influence all the design decisions and feedbacks, actually. So that's it. So let's go to the production pipeline. How do we create a level? So first of all, we have set up some tasks on Jira. And each designer has those, and there are many stages. The first stage is the pre-production. So let's talk about it. So in the pre-production, we need to get all the ingredients necessary. Each designer needs to get the ingredients for all the levels. So the gameplay elements, the art elements, and the story elements. So we get gameplay elements from a document called Gameplay Timeline. So what is Gameplay Timeline, you might ask? So Gameplay Timeline is a document that's created at the beginning of the project, at the end of pre-production actually, because in the pre-production, we are testing enemies, testing the mechanics, testing the objects, and level artists are testing the environments, creating concept art. A narrative designer creates the story. So when there is a point where we have planned out all the enemies that we want to have and we tested some of them, and the story is at the point when it can be devised into main plot points, we all distribute it in a document called Gameplay Timeline, in one document that's planning all the campaign. So that's how it looked in Ghostrunner 1. So each column represents the level. So this is the first level, this is the second level, this is the third level, right? So the first row represents the level name, the level number of the campaign, and the setting. The second row represents the available enemies. So each level is something special. We want to introduce a new enemy to the player, new mechanics, so everything in the campaign happens and there's something new to it besides the story and other stuff. So next up, we have the name of the scene in Unreal Engine. If somebody doesn't know where the level is, how it's called, he can just open this document without asking and find this stuff. Other than that, we have cutscenes. So if there is a cutscene necessary for the story, designer has to know it, right? So let's write it in. And then we have cyber voice sections, as we internally call them, VR. So those sections also are important for the story, but we also do this for the gameplay purposes. We'll get back to those later on. So designer needs to know also if those are present on the level. Next up, we have rifts. Those are power-ups that help the player to defeat the arena or maybe a parkour section. And we call those in the story uplinks. Next up, we have skills. So if there is a new skill, designer needs to know if he needs to make a tutorial for it, right? So there needs to be a specified section for it. All the arenas should be compatible with this skill basically in some way, or maybe objects that are present on the level. Sorry. Then, yeah, next up we have skill points, as we call them. It's mostly player progression, but at the beginning of the production, it's not specified as thoroughly, because you do these things later on and you update this. But you need to know it as a designer, what kind of upgrades those players have, that might have a important thing to it. So other than that, we have objects, gameplay objects, specific to a level, of course, and to a setting. Some of the objects may be like moving platforms, moving grapplings, fans that can be hacked. So other than enemies and story and all of those things, those objects also change the gameplay. So everything in the level is kind of fresh for the player when he plays new levels, right? So those things matter too. And we have also short story description. So one maybe two sentences. So how do you describe the story in a level? What needs to happen, basically? So it's kind of easy to tell. This level is about this gameplay stuff and this story stuff. And last but not least, we have the owners of levels. So the designers are assigned to a level. They are responsible for their levels. And if something is not working or they don't have it, like objects don't work, enemies don't work, tutorial doesn't work, they need to go to the producers, go to the programmers, and make sure that those things work. So that's the main gist of it. So let's say for the purposes of this presentation, gameplay timeline we want to create a level that has those 4 elements from gameplay timeline. So looking from left, we have the pistol guy. We call him the pistol guy internally, but he's called in the story the key. So next up we have the Uzi guy, as we call him. In the game he's called the trigger. And next up we have a shield beacon. And shield beacon is protecting the enemies via a shield that's generated by the generator that's placed somewhere else in the level. And player has to destroy this generator in order to make the enemy vulnerable. Next up, we have the jumping paths. So let's say for the purposes of this presentation, we want to create a level that includes 4 of those things gameplay-wise. So gameplay ingredients, right? Now we have these art ingredients, as I said, from pre-production slide. So artists create concept art because they know what the setting would be and they imagine it, right? So let's collect this concept art, collect their test scenes, and maybe use them in our level, because let's say we want to create a city level, right? Cyber city level this time. So let's collect those and have this in our pockets. So we also want to talk with the narrative designer to make sure what cutscenes, what Cyber Void sections, because Cyber Void sections also are used for story purposes, are going to be, and maybe what objects are needed for the story, like maybe objects that are related to gameplay could be added to this, besides looking at the gameplay timeline, right? So yeah, we have our ingredients, right? Let's now talk about level structure. So what is level structure, you might ask? The level structure consists of 3 elements. So there's platforming section, parkour sections, and combat sections and cyber void sections. So platforming sections are the medium tension levels. They are linear and mostly focus on parkouring, right? So jumping, dashing, wall running, grappling, etc., sliding. Then we have combat sections. Those are the highest tension sections in the game, and you can divide them into linear sections and arenas. So linear sections are linear as platforming sections, but you have enemies in between the platforming sections there, right? So they are placed in rows, you can say. Also, we have arenas, right? And the arenas are open-ended. You have many ways to defeat the arena. Go left, right, middle. You have multiple enemies, multiple ways to deal with this situation, and this is the highest tension level in tension of the difficulty and in the game. And you can have small arenas and big arenas. And last but not least, we have the cyber void sections. Those are zero tension places in the game. Those are used for 3 purposes: the story exposition, tutorials for skills for the player when he can learn it safely, and maybe some light puzzling to chill out the player after the combat section that's particularly hard, for example, right? So this is the typical level structure. This is the first level of Ghostrunner 1. And you might notice that in between combat sections, there are platforming sections. And this is specifically done, and also cyber void section is at the end, but it doesn't have to be. So if you look at the tension level pacing, the platforming is easier, less stressful for the player than the combat sections. And this is for the purposes of player engagement. If everything is all the time too hard, the player will get really tired and won't play your game. You need to have breathers after arenas and those are specific functions for it. And also, the second thing you have to notice is that each arena is escalating with tension. So it goes higher, and there's a culmination at some point. So each level should have this. So let's get back to our example, right? We want to do this gameplay ingredients in our level, right? So let's establish that looking from gameplay timeline document, previous level had established pistol enemies and shield beacons, right? So in our level, we want to establish, show to the player new enemy, the Uzi guy, and the jumping paths, right? So the best way to show to the player a new thing, I believe, is to show it at least 3 times. So we need 3 encounters with the enemy, right? And each encounter should escalate, as we established. And also, in between the encounters, we need platforming sections, right, for ease of moments after and before the encounters. So it could look like this. So the first platforming section is easy. Then you have linear encounter where you show to the player how the enemy works. So he's not distracted by anything else, just this enemy. Then you have breeder after the fight. Then we have escalation in small arena. Maybe there are some choices to defeat the enemies, not just the linear way, because this is an arena. And maybe this time 2 guys instead of 1, because we want to escalate and test the player if he knows the enemy. Then we have breeder. And of course, finally, big finale, we have this time 3 guys, right? So this is the typical level structure. But we wanted to use the enemies from the previous level, right? So the pistol guys could be used as a fill-in. You don't have to establish them second time. Player knows it. So let's escalate not with the same type of enemy, just higher numbers. We can escalate with mixed of enemies, so like that. Like in Arena 3 and 2. And also we wanted to use the shield beacon, right? So let's maybe add the shield beacon to the last arena where one of the pistol guys is protected by the shield. So this kind of looks like an interesting arena already, more interesting than just 3 machine gun guys, right? We wanted also to introduce the jumping paths, right? So the best way, as I said, I think the best way is to show it at least 3 times, right? But in this example, we will show it 4 times because we are combining things. So let's start with platforming, easy, nothing new. Encounter with enemy, showing the new enemy. Then we have platforming section. That's kind of easy, but requires player to use the platforming jumping path in order to progress. So he has to learn it. So we know these 2 things. Let's put those 2 things together in the next arena. So we test the player with the Uzi guy, with the pistol guy, and the jumping path in one arena, small arena. Then we made escalate. The platforming could also escalate, but not as much as the tension of the arenas. But we can test the player using, for example, this time 2 jumping paths instead of 1. And with big finale, we use all of those things together. So we test the player that he knows these things that were established, and we combine them. So Uzi guy, pistol guy, the shield beacon, and 2 jumping paths. Right, so that's how it looks right now, our level structure. But we wanted to add the art ingredients, right? So I believe in the Ghostrunner 2, we are doing this more than Ghostrunner 1. I believe it is the best way to create blockouts out of the concept art, or maybe real-life reference, or maybe just an idea, as you have solid idea of what the place could be. You make simple blocks, and you may use them. The first use of this, I believe it is for the background purposes. So let's establish that we want to have a background in the platforming sections, right? So we establish the platforming sections will go a particular way, so player is faced in the view, and he can see the view that the concept art is used in the game, actually. And you can place maybe a small balcony, so maybe at the dialogue that comments it, and this is a nice breather for the player and a nice view. So this is the one way you can use it. The second way, I believe, and the third way, also the better way, is to use it as a base of the blockouts from the concept art and ideas, is to use it as a base of your arena or your platforming section. So you do this, and it is a gameplay arena actually inspired by real concept art, and it looks better than more of the abstract stuff you might come up with without thinking about this stuff. So we can use maybe this for platforming sections and arenas, right? So we have our concept art references, real life references, or just a solid idea of what it is. story, right? We wanted also to introduce the story. So cyber voice sections also are important, as I established, because they are zero tension places in the game. So you remember that we had this small arena, right? And it was quite heavy on the difficulty there. So I would suggest to add maybe cyber void there, to have a breather that is a bit more lengthy and for the player to chill out after this all these intense things. And maybe we can establish there like a tutorial for skill, establish some stories, so light puzzling so player can chill out and learn a skill maybe to defeat the big arena encounter in an easier way. This is just an option for the player, right? So that's how it could look right now, like our level structure plan. This is just a plan. But in the Ghostrunner 2, actually, I started to ask a question that's maybe more relevant. So what's the big picture idea of the level? What does it mean? Looking from the top, what is this place, actually? So what is the setting, actually? You have the arenas, but what's the overall view? If we go through the top down, for the big picture view, as I call it, and you look at the city, it should look something like this, right? So we find maybe references from real-life cities, from concept art, or you have just a solid idea what this place could be. And I would, of course, encourage to do this blockout, big picture blockout, as I call it. So you have the big idea of what the place is, you put it in your level, and then maybe add level structure to it, right? In a way that it makes more sense in the setting, not just abstract, parkour stuff. So that's how it could look in Ghostrunner 1, or maybe Ghostrunner 2, we use those things that way. And gray boxes represent maybe the buildings if you look from the top, right? It kind of they kind of make sense as a city. They don't have to be super realistic. They just have to have an illusion of a space that's good enough, right? So we create blockouts out of these real-life references and concept art. So in GR2, I encourage to do big picture blockout first before doing the level structure. But we have a mixed approach right now. And in Ghostrunner 1, we were mostly thinking about level structure first. So that's maybe one of the differences. And yeah, we have our ingredients, we have our plan for the level. Now maybe the designer should also play the levels that are before your level in the gameplay timeline and after your levels, so to know what's going on in those levels. Maybe those levels establish something different from big picture blockout and they are the same setting. So they should have things in common, right? So it makes more sense, they flow together better. And maybe they have different storytelling devices or anything. So it has to be, a designer has to know what those things are in other levels in order to make his level. So we have done with pre-production. Phew. And now let's do the initial blockout, the stage 2. When we are talking about creating a level, we have to talk about how we test the level. This is extremely important. So, initial blockout. We create big picture blockout. We create 25% of the segments. So let's say 4 segments this is. 2 parkour sections, 2 combat sections, something like that. Not too much. And it should be ready to play. I know it's the beginning of the project and anything, or the level, and not everything works perfectly. But it is a duty of the designer to make things going and playable. So, let's talk about how to test a level a bit. I believe the best way to test a level is to invite somebody to your desk or via stream, because written reviews, as you will say, oh, just tell me what you think about the level, is not comprehensive enough, in my opinion. You'll get much more info from looking how the player plays. You don't explain them anything. You don't comment on what they do. You don't want them to be stressed out, right? If they are stuck, you help them. That's when you interfere. You find the problems, and you modify the level when you find the problem. For example, guidance, right? They don't know where to go. They don't know how to defeat the enemy. Maybe it's too hard. The tension is too hard. The performing is too hard. They don't know how to use the object or whatever. It could be a number of things. You just fixed it, and then invite new person. Why new person? Because when somebody plays your level 2 times and they know it too much, you will not find as many problems if they played your level too much. So this new mindset is really important. You sit and you see all the problems will occur without them talking to you. We'll see. This is extremely important. So watch closely what they do and what they don't do. So where they go, where they don't go, do they know how to use the things, right? I just established the objects, the enemies, the skills. Do they use the skills? Do they use the skills on the objects or whatever? And their reactions and actions. Are they pissed off? Are they having fun? Are they tired? Maybe they want to be friendly. Oh, it's great, you know. What they do is more important than what they say, actually, I believe, because you will see it if they're pissed off and level is unclear and they're not having fun. And fix the problems that are real for your game you are creating. That means we have our game pillars, right? We have our game idea, and we have our player base, or the player that we want to attract. So we have to fix the problems that are real for our game. So maybe somebody will report a bug. That's maybe not the reason it is not working. Something else might be wrong, or maybe it's not compatible with the game idea. So we have to really gauge those things if they make sense. So different player types. Everybody at the company plays different games. That's really cool. And not everybody, surprise, surprise, is a hardcore speedrunner gamer. And when you play this on different people, you will find different things how they play. And this is much more useful for you to test on. Of course, and repeating myself, but we test the level on people that don't know the level. So you invite 2 and 3 people at this stage, right? The 25% initial blockout, we are back here. And at this stage, we invite designers. Maybe they play once or twice your level, then you invite another, maybe a couple of times repeat it. Then you check the guidance, you look for this guidance. I mean, not just where to go, what to do. That means how to defeat the enemies, how to use the skills. Are they having fun? The difficulty, the tension. Is it too hard? Is it too tiresome? Is the flow okay? A number of those little things, but they add up. Fix the problems that are real, right? And play again. Then show it to our director. We didn't do this as much in Ghostrunner 1. In Ghostrunner 2, we do this. So we invite our art director to make feedback, because the earlier the feedback is done from him, well, he doesn't like your big picture idea. He doesn't like your whatever. You have to address it now, because the changes are easier to be made now. Then when you finish the blockout, it will be way harder to do those things. So you do this now. You get his feedback, apply his feedback, really important. Then you show it to a narrative designer. So he has to know how much space does he has for his dialogues, for the cybervolt exposition, for anything that he wants to show. Maybe the objects that he wants to show are not present, and he will ask you to add them, right? So that's what we have right now. Like, this is our progress. We made 4 segments and big picture idea, like with the buildings. And let's go to the advanced blockout. Yeah, next stage. So this is a similar stage, but there are like minor differences in them. We have 50% of the blockouts right now, so half of them, big picture blockout. But most of mechanics should be done right now, and it should be ready to play with small assistance, right? It should be, all the things should be kind of working right now. We invite more people, but this time maybe outside from design, because design knows the level too well, right? So we invite programmers, so we invite QA, so we invite 3D art, so we invite animators. Everybody from the company I try to engage with and invite them. This is very important, because they are different player types. They are not all hardcore, you know, your speedrunners playing on dense math level type of players, right? So you have to see those things, how they play, where they go, where they don't go, the guidance, the difficulty, the fun, the same things, right? We fix the problems that we find. Again, show it to our director. Again, apply his feedback, because it's 50%. We can do more changes that way. And show it to narrative designer. Again, apply his feedback. That's what we have right now. Yeah, it's going along well. So, done an approved blockout stage. So we have 100% of segments. We have all the blockout, big picture blockout idea done, but we want to add the dialogues and collectibles now. So you remember, we were talking about how the narrative designer needs to have feedback and apply this feedback so he has enough space for the dialogues and for the cutscenes and objects and cyber voice sections. Because, as I established, the low tension places are the platforming sections and the cyber voice sections, because the dialogues are there. So while the player is platforming or doing the puzzles or whatever, he has to listen to the dialogues, and it's not so easy for the players, surprise, surprise, to do those things if the platforming is too hard, if the cyber void is too convoluted or whatever. So that's one thing. The other thing, the dialogue should be done in a synthesized voice for testing purposes. So you do the waves in synthesized voice, and they are played really, really slowly like an actor. And you play the level, the platforming section, one platforming section the regular way, not the speedrunner way, and you don't stop. And as long as the platforming section lasts, that's how long the dialogue should be. So you play your whole level, and there are no dialogues on combat. So you play your platforming section, and the dialogue is ending, and you don't overlap the combat, right? And you also want to add the collectibles, because it's connected to the blockouts and to the level art. They need to have these things done. It should be ready to play with no assistance at that point. Everything should be working. Tutorials. If you don't have tutorials, maybe add some, I don't know, letters in the engine. It will work. Just, it should be ready to play with no assistance. Why I say it? Because everybody at the company knows the level too well, right? So you can invite friends and family. You can do mock reviews. You can, even if they don't have graphics, those levels should work. Those levels should have great guidance, great difficulty spikes, and be fun. If they are not, we need to find out. We need to have mock reviews, friends and family tests, and etc. Invite anybody who hasn't played the level of the company too, of course. And people that played the level in the initial blockout stage played only 4 segments, right? So now we have 100% of segments, and after X numbers of fixes, it is a new level for them. So they can play it too. It is a new level. They will forget it. They played like 2 times. So it's like 2 weeks pass or 3 weeks pass or how long. We fix the problems, show it to the director again, get his feedback again, and now we count it into sub-levels. So what are sub-levels, you might ask? So sub-levels are maybe something is more obvious to one people, but no, not to all. Sub-levels are a way for our people in company to work on the level simultaneously. So you cut your level into sub-levels, and one sub-level may be like 3 segments, so 2 parkour sections and 1 combat section, right? In between sub-levels, you also add corridors with doors, so when you enter a corridor, you can unload the level. Also, dialogues, cutscenes, audio, all of those things are separate sub-levels. If somebody from other departments wants to work on the level, he doesn't have to wait for the scene to be available. So that's how typical level structure looks like in the engine from the top-down view. That's what we have right now. We have all the sections done, right? This 100%. Now let's do the cleanup section. So we implement at this point remaining key volumes because QA will find all the places where there is none, right? So player goes through the floor or whatever. We implement the remaining bound colliders, right? It should be done right now. So player doesn't go out of bounds. We create a video playthrough for the level art, for the reference, and maybe for the milestone, because your publisher wants to see the level, and they don't have time to replay everything. It is useful for those purposes. And you play the normal way, the regular way, not the speedrunner way, so how the player would play it. You create overview screenshot of sub-levels for level art in QA. This might be useful for them. When QA wants to report a bug, they want to know, oh, this is sub-3. So I know this bug is sub-3, and you don't have to look for it as much. And the level artists want to know when the sub-level starts and ends, so they know where to work on it, right? So it might be useful for them too. We create a document comparing screenshot of blockout versus the reference. So I encourage to do this in Ghostrunner 2, and Ghostrunner 1, it wasn't as present. So this is not a real document, this is just a representation because I cannot show you the Ghostrunner 2 stuff. So you create just a comparison. I've wanted to create a city, the picture blockout city, so maybe this was the reference for it. I've made this arena or a platforming section, so it was inspired by this reference. So they see your idea, not just a bunch of blocks and see, oh, what is it, right? And we also create a document for all the collectibles for the QA, because surprise, surprise, not everybody besides the designers know where all the collectibles are. So when the designer goes on a day off, they have a document for getting all the collectibles. They have a job, for example, get all the collectibles achievements, right, to test it. So they have to know this stuff. Other than that, we have the levels in numbers document. This is the levels in numbers document from Ghostrunner 1. So the levels in numbers document is a document where we put in all the numbers of enemies present in levels. So in this level we have this number of enemies. In this level we have this number of enemies, particular types. In this level we have particular numbers of objects, gameplay objects, of collectibles or power-ups and etc. or whatever you may find. You can do three things with this document, I believe. So first thing you can do is the economy if you have a shop or something. So you kill the enemies and you have XP or something, right? You can create the player progression as we established in the gameplay timeline. The tiers can be devised when we have number of enemies. So we have X number of enemies and we can do this because of it. Other than that, we can do the achievement. Kill X number of enemies. Work with X number of objects or something like that, right? I think it's useful. We also create a copy of level for QA and level art. So on the left, this is our level, and we add a prefix blockout to it. Why? Because this is the blockout, right? We create a copy to have it, and it's in build, and it goes to the publisher, it goes into the build, and you can play it all the time. And you create a copy level named with prefix world for the level artist, because they want to work on it, and it won't be playable, right? Why world? Because when adding sublevels to persistent, the process is called adding level to world. So I thought to myself, okay, let's add maybe this prefix. So how do we work with level art? Because the blockout is done, right? So we show the level to the level art, and we make a meeting, maybe a stream or something. We show them everything. We show them playthrough. We show them references. Show the gameplay. Or it's going there. We show all the story bits. And guess what? They are overwhelmed. So when they are overwhelmed, in Ghostrunner 2, I decided that we need to work one-on-one with them because it's too much. You have like 2 meetings this time. So you have a particular level artist assigned to your sub-level, and the artist will work with you one-on-one. It is less intimidating that way. They can ask more questions, maybe some changes. Can I change this? Yes, you can change this. It doesn't break the level. You show them golden path and everything that you were referencing or you want to achieve. Maybe they have different idea for doing those things, or they don't have the assets for your grand vision to have everything there, right? So we have to talk about this. So level artists work with level designers one-on-one. Set dressing starts, so adding assets. And some sub-levels are done. So there's another difference between Ghostrunner 2 and Ghostrunner 1. In Ghostrunner 1, we were waiting until all the assets were done, and then we were testing it. Now, when some sub-levels are done, considered done, we test them while the other artists work on the future subs. So that way it's more efficient. We are asking the question together with QA. Is the set dressing okay? Is there blocking the main path? So is it changing anything too much? We feedback it to one-on-one situation with the level artists, and we do this process a couple of more times until all the set dressing is done in the level. So when all the set dressing is done, the lighting can be implemented. So lighting artist is stepping in. So lighting artist is a leader of level art, so he knows the level by now, usually. But if he doesn't, we can do a meeting with him, right? And surprise, surprise, he does the light and guidance. But as I established, it is very important to do the guidance right in the blockouts. If the gray boxes don't work, adding lightning and set dressing will make it worse. It's not going to be better, never. So you have to make sure your blockout is feedback like through the roof and iterated enough with everybody. So we test it, and we can invite people that played the blockout, because people that play the blockout, even the complete one, for them, the set dress level with lightning is a completely different level. They won't remember it. So you can see the guidance, where they go, where they don't go. Is your monitor too dark or whatever, you know, the conversations like that. So we feedback it, we fix it if it's possible. And then we can do the level cleanup, yeah. The level cleanup after LA task, the last task. So what is it? And lightning guidance is implemented, right? So level design fixes the bugs in the world level, because usually at that point there are blockers still. There are places where nothing works. but we have to clean it up and do it, make it playable. This is the main point of this stage. You also will implement streaming, right? We have sublevels, we have the corridors, we remember the stuff. And we test together with QA, again, because the QA knows the level very much, probably as much as the level design. And we test the performance. And we ask ourselves the question, is the performance okay? If it's not okay, we ask the tech artist to step in together with level artists and lighting artists to fix the stuff. And they work, and we test it on the build again and again until it's good. And the level is done. Yeah. So, if the level is done and everything is working, we can put it in the build, right? So now the level name prefix world is present in the build. So that's how the Ghostrunner 2 level design pipeline works right now. But the reality is that it hasn't started that way in the Ghostrunner 1. It hasn't started that way in Ghostrunner 2. It's always evolving, always changing. If we skip the pre-production, the lengthy pre-production, if we skip the tests early on, the more problems come out in the future. If we skip all the documentation stuff, we have to do it eventually at some point. It's all really piling up. I believe it is the good way to follow the steps. We will change them if they don't work. It's all evolving and all changing all the time. So other than that, the expectations are one thing, but the reality is one thing. You have to understand that nothing is perfect. This is just like a core that we can be attached to, and everything in the production changes very rapidly, as we all know it. Let's finish off with the mindset of the designer. So young designers don't understand it, but one more level designers understand it. So the game is for the player, not the developer. So what I mean by that, we know the level way too much. Everything is easy, everything is obvious. For the player, it isn't. It isn't. And you have to make sure it is. It is. So it is your job. Designer is testing the level, and he knows it too well, right? Somebody else plays it, oh, it's a mess. You have to fix it. And the testing does the announcing, not the designer. If the level is cool, it's ready, right? It's done. And if something doesn't work, the guidance doesn't work, your enemy is too hard, your arena is too convoluted, you have to fix it, you have to redo it. Don't be attached to it. It has to be done. It's not for you. So watch people how they play the game, right? We established that. Written reviews are okay, but better is to watch them. And I've watched all the gameplay playthroughs, all the reviews from Ghostrunner 1 by making Ghostrunner 2, and believe me, not everybody is a hardcore speedrunner, right? And I believe the player of Ghostrunner games has a combination of traits, and this balance of traits is very important. So I've made those things up. It is not like official names or anything, but for my purposes it works, sorry. And internally, if somebody plays, somebody has a different balance of traits, right? But some people like to play more hardcore, like skipping the story, going really fast, and don't care about anything else like abilities or whatever. Some players are more mid-core casual oriented, like playing all the AAA titles, like looking around and feeling the story and playing methodically, but they are engaged too. Sorry. And also there's a mid-core optimizer type, as I call it, the person that wants to play the most optimal way, the most optimal upgrades have to be put in. Every step matters, so playing really slowly. They play these games too, and they are having fun. And also vacuum cleaner completionist type of game players. So that means getting all the collectibles, getting all the audio logs, killing all the enemies, everything to do the game 100%. And combination of those traits are really important. So when you feedback a level and you lean too much towards the hardcore, maybe the platforming will be too hard, for example, and there won't be enough breeders, right? And you have to keep those things in mind, all of those things, because you will alienate your players if you make too many changes leaning out into separate directions. So maybe too easy game would be not enough fun for the hardcore, right? So you have to know those things. Think of issues as problems and solutions. What I mean by that is that we have our game pillars, we have our game idea, we know the player, but is this the problem that's reported by the mock reviews, for example? Is this the real problem that's causing the dissatisfaction? Maybe something else is causing the dissatisfaction of the game. Or, is the problem not really real because the player that plays those games knows these features and somebody who playtested it will not play those kind of games. So there are many, many possibilities in those things, and we have to ask ourselves honestly if Arena works or doesn't work, or maybe something else is a problem or it's not a problem. We play other games to get solutions and problems to get inspired. So we create a Ghostrunner 2, right? Or Ghostrunner 1 or any other game. So we have to look how other games created the same feature. So what is the response of the audience to this feature? You can do this if you have a media person. He will collect for you all the references, but you can do it as yourself with a designer. So I look at those things and we have then arguments. Well, in this game it works, so maybe let's try this. It's not just guessing, you can check it out in other games, how the things works. When you playtest the level, I believe it is the best way, when you create a level, play it as a designer with no immortal, no clip. So play the level through the John Romero way as it is, and you find the bug and you fix the bug. Then you play the level again until it's good. But when there's a bug fixing time, of course, you can fix in the places and teleport, right? But the best flow level, I believe, is played and test from the beginning to end. Plan out and test the level extensively, right? So if you don't do this, the feature will be not good. You have to test early on, plan a bit, a bunch, and you have to do it. It's important. And last but not least, designer should be like an NCO, non-commissioned officer. What I mean by that is in NATO armies, there's a non-commissioned officer. That means he doesn't wait around for the general to go to this tree or go to this building and shoot this person. He has his task. He knows what to do. He thinks of the plan and he does it. So like a designer knows all of his ingredients. He knows his enemy is not working. He goes to the producer, go to the programmer. I need this to work. And if he needs testing, he goes and invites people to play test the game. You see how they play. This is extremely important because if you were just reactive, you will just wait for orders, your level will be worse. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Marcin. It was a splendid presentation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, please download the conference app and give Marcin some nice reviews on some nice opinions and rates. Unfortunately, we don't have time for a Q&A. But if you have any questions for Marcin, and I believe you do, so please meet him in the backside, and you can talk with him about the level designer because it is really a fascinating topic, and I'm pretty sure that Marcin will have time to speak with each one of you.
Yeah, no problem. If somebody has a question, feel free to ask me.
Okay, so thank you very much for attention. Thank you very much, Marcin, once again.
Thank you.
And have a nice day.
Thank you.